Hello, this is Danpro. Welcome back to another portion of my Rigify tutorial series, and we're actually not going to talk specifically about Rigify in this tutorial. We're actually going to talk about weight painting, setting weights in Blender, and also a little bit about topology at the end here. So let's actually get in here and talk about the secret to weight painting, and it's actually pretty simple, and I'm just going to tell you what it is right off the bat. Now, the secret to weight painting is normalized weights. It's actually just a little bit more complicated than that. More specifically, the secret to weight painting is Blender will automatically always internally normalize the weights, and but it won't force us to normalize the weights. So what we're seeing and what Blender's seeing are often two different things, and that's what causes all the confusion. So if that doesn't make sense, hopefully some of my examples here will, and you'll be able to connect the dots a little bit better. So let's take our arm mesh, and this is the same setup as we had in part 5. Shift select any bone in our armature, and let's parent it with empty groups. So we've got our arm mesh, and just like before, it's parented to the arm rig. We do have our armature modifier. Let's turn on preserve volume and our edit mode toggles and put it in the correct spot in our stack. We talked about this in part 5 here, and now we have our vertex groups, but they're empty. So let's go to select our mesh, and we'll go to weight paint mode and start adding some weights. Now, this default way of looking at our mesh in weight paint mode, you see everything's blue, but it's got this really shiny, it's showing a shine on it, and I really don't like that. I think it's kind of tough, especially if you've got like aqua colored colors. I think it makes seeing our weights kind of tough, but we can actually fix that pretty easily just by going into typing Z and go to our wireframe mode, and then we get a flat shading. And another benefit of wireframe mode is we can actually see the topology in our mesh. So what we're actually going to be painting is where these lines come together here and create the cross. That's where the vertex is, and that's where we're going to be adding weights to our mesh. So a couple things there to help us out. Alright, one other thing I want to talk about is I'm actually not using my brushes correctly, and I know I'm not doing that. I just want to point this out so you don't think that this is the right method. I don't actually change my brushes while I'm weight painting, so I usually just stick with a single brush, and right now I've got it on subtract, and you can see my blend type here is at add. So right now I'm actually, even though I have a subtract brush, I'm adding weights according to my settings here. So usually when I want to add weights, I'll just go to add. If I want to subtract weights, I'll just switch my blend type to subtract. So I know I'm doing this wrong. I apologize for it. It's just a habit that I've picked up. You would probably want to learn the hotkeys for switching your brushes automatically up here, and if you use a tablet and you've done some sculpting, you've probably already got a way better workflow than I have for that. So just wanted to point that out. Don't want to get off track too much. Let me just go back to add here. Alright, now I know my strength is at 1. I like to always have my strength at 1 so I know the exact weights I'm painting. I'm going to change my weights to 0.001. Alright, so let's paint. I'm going to select this arm here, which is arm 1.002, and it's selecting when we're weight painting, when we select a bone, is that we're not actually painting on the armature. We're selecting a bone, and that is automatically selecting the corresponding vertex group for that bone on our mesh. So now with this bone selected, we have arm 1.002 vertex group selected. Let's paint that weight of 0.001 on our mesh, and I'll just kind of rub over here. And you can see that it doesn't look like it did anything because that weight was so low. It's so close to a 0 weight, we can't actually see what's happening here, so kind of confusing. And I didn't have, unfortunately, didn't have my see-through option here. I wanted to paint that all in one shot. So this is our see-through. We can see through our mesh and actually paint things behind it. So I'm actually going to have to go to edit mode here real quickly and fix this. Apologize. I'm just going to go, I'm going to remove all groups. Alright, I'll repaint this. So paint over this mesh with my 0.001 weights. Alright, now like I said, we can't see this, so here's an option that can really help us. We go to our tools panel, Options tab, show 0 weights. We can turn this from none to active, and that will show make all of our 0 weights black. So now we can see the difference. I think you'll agree that that's quite a bit easier to see what we actually did there. And now with my see-through option on here, I actually painted all those vertices on the backside in one shot. Alright, now here's the first odd thing that we're going to run into. Now, we would expect, or at least I expected when I first started weight painting, that this very super small weight here, 0.001, when I paint that weight for this bone, or this vertex group, it's barely going to move those vertices when I move that bone, but that's actually not what's going to happen. So if I just move this up, it's actually moving like 100%. So now we're back to what I talked about before. Blender is always going to internally normalize these weights, but what we're seeing is something completely different. So if we don't normalize our weights, we're not seeing what Blender is seeing. Let me actually tab into edit mode of my mesh here. I'm going to select one of these vertices here and show you another way we can check our weights, not in weight paint mode. We do it in edit mode as well. Under our Vertex Weights, if we don't have anything selected, it's going to disappear. So you need to actually select a vertex, and then we can see the weights that are assigned to that. So Vertex Weights is assigned to arm1.002, a weight of 001, and that's what we painted. So that's what we should expect. Alright, now the reason it's not moving correctly, or not moving the way we expected, is because Blender is going to take this value and normalize it. And what normalizing is Blender is going to look at all the weights assigned to that vertice and figure out a ratio so it can reassign new values to that, so everything in there is going to equal a maximum of 1.0. So it's going to change this weight to 1.0. Since we've only added this vertex to a single group, I know if I normalize this, it is going to be a weight of 1. But that's not what we're seeing. If I actually go into back to weight paint mode, I've normalized this one, so we're seeing kind of a kaleidoscope of colors right here, but all these vertices are actually moving exactly the same. They're stuck at 100% to that bone. So that's odd. So, but we know we need to normalize our weights so we see what Blender sees, and that's the trick to weight painting. So I'm going to select all my vertices in edit mode, go to my tools panel, and let's just slide down here, and I'm going to find tool weights, and I'm going to click normalize all, and then I'm going to make sure that my options for normalize all is set to deform pose bones, and make sure that this lock active is not on. And I'm not really sure. Keeps the value of the active group while normalizing others. Yeah, I want to make sure that they're all normalized, so definitely uncheck that one. Alright, let's go back to weight paint mode. Now we are seeing what Blender was seeing. Everything is weighted to that bone 100%. So if your vertices are only assigned to a single vertex group, it doesn't matter what that weight's really going to be. Blender's going to see it as 100% weights. So that might seem odd, and we really can't see any difference here until I add some influence from another group. But since we've got this already set up here, let me actually talk about, I've talked about before, I think of weight painting as anchoring it towards a bone, and basically this is what we're seeing, at least on this end. When I rotate this up, these vertices are sticking 100% to this bone. The only odd thing we're seeing is right here. It looks like it's kind of defying logic here, because these vertices don't have any weights from any other bone. And we can actually see that 1.0 weight here now that we've normalized it in edit mode. So what's going on there? This deformation is not happening because of weight painting. It's happening because of our subsurf modifier, and I can show that just by turning it off. So remember how our modifier stack works. Our armature modifier is taking these vertices assigned to that bone, and it's moving it, and then our subsurf modifier is taking those results and dividing it. So that's what it's making it look like. It's deforming when because of weight painting, when it's not. So I just want you to be aware of that. I usually don't worry about this at all. I just weight paint to make sure that my subsurf looks good. So it's something that I usually use subsurf on every one of my models. So just wanted to point that out. Anyways, don't want to get too far off track. Let's get back here and select all of these vertices. Let's go to our Vertex Data tab and back down arrow here. Let's just remove all those vertices from all groups. So now we're back to empty groups like we started. Let's try this one more time here just to show another example, and hopefully everything makes sense here. I'm going to select arm1.001 bone and paint some influence all the way to the center line here, and then I'm going to select arm 1.001, which selects that vertex group, and I'm going to paint some influence from this bone all the way to that center group. Now, once again, we're not seeing normalized weights like Blender is, so if we're just looking at the weights, this looks completely wrong. But let me go to edit mode here and select one of these central vertex groups, or one of these central vertices, so we can look at our vertex weights, and we can see that they're both weighted to each bone equally, 0.001 for each. Alright, and like I said before, Blender is going to find these weights. It's going to figure out a ratio between them and reassign new values, so these values equal 1. So if I normalize it, I know because these are equal values and there's only 2 of them, it's going to assign a value of 0.5. So if I normalize it, I can kind of prove that. And let's go to weight paint mode, and you can see that it's green. The green value is about 50%. So let's go back to edit mode, select all our vertices, and also normalize all, and form pose bones only. And now we are seeing what Blender is seeing. So hopefully this makes sense. This is the whole key, and I think that's where everybody usually gets tripped up, is if we're not seeing normalized weights in our viewport, we're not seeing what Blender is actually, how Blender is actually moving those vertices. So alright, I have one more example here that I want to show. We delete, remove from all groups. Alright, so we're back to our empty groups here. I'm going to select one single vertex right here. Let me actually turn off my see-through for this one and turn up my weights here right to 1.0. Alright, I want to paint this vertex right here 100% to this bone. So that's red. Now I'm going to select this bone and paint that same vertex 100% red. And this bone, let me zoom in here a little bit, 100% red, and one more time for this one. So hopefully with positive values here, when I go back to edit mode here, let's select that vertex that I was painting. Now it's the backside one. Alright, we can see that I've painted a value of 100% on 4 different bones. So this is another thing that people often, you're looking at, you've got a bone selected and you're manipulating it, and it shows red, so you would expect it, or at least think that it's going to move 100% with that bone. But like I said, what we're seeing and what Blender is seeing are two different things right now. Blender is taking this value, it's figuring out that ratio between all 4 of these weights and assigning a new value so everything equals 1. So in this case, every one of these, this vertex is actually assigned to every one of these bones at a value of 0.25, and I can normalize that and show that. So that's the whole secret of weight painting. Like I said, we need to see what Blender is seeing, otherwise it's really tough to make decisions on how to weight paint. So there's the secret. Let me actually just go back and weight paint all this stuff here. I can probably just delete all my groups. I'm just going to go back, just reparent our mesh here. Select the mesh, shift select the armature, control P, let's set parent to armature deform with automatic weights. So parent to the arm rig, armature modifier, we didn't delete it, so it's still on the right spot. Preserve volume, all that stuff is still there, and now we have vertex groups with vertex weights that are auto weighted. There's one more thing I want to talk about here. So far we've only talked about vertex groups that are actually working to deform our mesh, but vertex groups are really valuable and really useful for a lot of different things in Blender, and there's something we have to be careful of when we're normalizing our weights, that we are not normalizing weights for vertex groups that are being used for other things. So let me just add a couple vertex groups. Maybe it'll just be easier. So here's one thing that's fur length. So we've got a hair system. Oops, I should actually probably spell that right. So we've got a hair system. Let's actually go to edit or weight paint mode. Select our fur length vertex group. I'm just going to change my weight to 0.5. You see through our mesh here once again. Alright, so let's say we've got a vertex group that's controlling the length of our fur for a hair particle system. Alright, and then we've got another one. Let's call this one mask, and change my weight back to 100%. So I use vertex groups all the time for mask modifiers, so I can mask certain parts of my mesh. So especially when I'm adding clothing to a character and I don't want to have to see all the underlying mesh or make Blender try to render that, I'll use a mask modifier to hide it. So that's another useful way to use vertex groups, and you can probably think of 100 different ways yourself. So I'm just going to add these two kind of dummy ones here just to show you, and we need to be careful when we're normalizing our weights. So if I actually select these vertices, when I auto weighted these, Blender usually gets pretty close to normalizing those weights, but you can see that there's a little bit of difference here. And also in our vertex weights, you'll notice that there's three different options. We've got our deform vertex groups, and we've got our other groups, and then we've got our all. So we're seeing our deform and our other groups here, obviously all. So when we select all these vertices, if we're using edit mode to do our normalizing, if we normalized all and did not have deform pose bones, if we did all of our groups, that would actually screw everything up pretty bad. So we want to make sure that we're only Blender knows that these groups, arm1, 001, 002, and so on, are part of our deform group. So we want to make sure that we are only normalizing those groups. So let me go back to check this out, and we should see it. We see our values for our deform options normalized now. They all equal 1. If we were to add all these up. Alright, so we got to be careful that we are not normalizing any other groups. So like I said, fur length in our mask. So something to be aware of. Another way we can actually normalize while we're weight painting, let me go to weight paint mode here, is to check on this auto normalize checkbox. So what auto normalize is going to do is, if we add influence from one vertex group, it's going to subtract it from another vertex group, so it equals 1. So it's basically just going to auto set those for us, so we don't have to go in edit mode to do that. And that's very beneficial and useful in a lot of situations. Most of the time it's going to be do a very good job. Let me just add some influence from arm1.002 over here. Oops, my weights are pretty high. Drop them down here a little bit. So if I wanted to add a little bit of influence over here, it's going to add that influence to those vertices and subtract it from this group. And if I just make it a little darker here, we can actually see our difference here. Maybe not. Get it a little darker. This one should turn green. Nope, I don't have auto normalize on. That's why that wasn't happening. So if we're going to use auto normalize, we should actually turn on auto normalize. Alright, now we see it. So like I said, when we're adding influence from one vertex group onto a vertice, it's going to subtract it from another one. So that's very useful in a lot of situations, but there are some areas where it's actually going to work against us, or could possibly work against us. So let me show you an example of one of those areas, and the shoulders. This is one of the tougher areas for most people to weight paint, and the reason for that, besides most people don't normalize their weights, so they're not actually seeing what Blender is seeing. The reason this is tough to weight paint is there's actually a lot of different bones all affecting this area. So there's a chest bone affecting this area, there's the neck bones affecting this area, the shoulders obviously going to affect this area, and also this upper arm, and sometimes even a little bit of this lower arm bone here. So and if we the breastbone and possibly a scapula if we added those things. So there's actually a lot of bones that are all competing for influence on just a few vertices. So let's say that we wanted to add some influence from our arm to fix a deformation. We could be adding influence to our upper arm .001 vertex group, but it could actually, if we're using auto normalize, it could be subtracting it from the wrong bone. So we might not want it to subtract it from our chest bone or our shoulder bone or our neck bone or whatever. And in order to kind of fix that, we have to turn auto normalize off. So basically what we're going to do there is kind of switch places. We're actually going to change the ratios here. We're just going to add influence from one bone, and after we're done and we get the results we want, then we're just going to go in here and edit mode, select all those vertices, and have Blender figure out what the true weights should be. So we'll normalize them by hand. So in those situations, like I said, when you've got multiple bones affecting the same vertices, auto normalize isn't always helpful, because sometimes it will subtract weights from the wrong bone. So, but like I just probably poorly explained, there's a way around it, and we'll definitely get to that, some of those situations when we get back to rigging Eve. So alright, let's set this up. Actually, I want to reweight this. I'm going to select that mesh, shift select the armature, just parent it with automatic weights again, just so it reweights these vertex groups. Undo what I was doing there, and let's talk about weight paint and topology, and how topology and weight paint kind of goes hand in hand, and how it can affect how our meshes deform. I have this simple example here. I'm going to just change my display type here to wire and draw all edges, just so I don't have to go to we can see our topology in here without having to go into edit mode. Alright, now I mentioned this before, this is my bad topology example, and the reason it makes it bad, if I just rotate this arm up, is this mesh really squishes in, and the reason it squishes in is because I don't have enough support at this joint. So I've got a loop, an edge loop that's centered right in the middle of these two bones here, and because I don't have that support, it's not going to deform really well. So you can see that this one deforms much better than this one. I go up to about 90 degrees, and it's simply because I added 2 more loops to that topology, 2 more loops right near where these 2 bones are bending that mesh. So I hope that makes sense. So that's kind of a rule of thumb. Wherever you have a joint, you should have an edge loop that surrounds that joint, and also have a couple supporting loops pretty close to that area, so you can get better deformations. If I actually go to weight paint mode, let me actually try to weight paint the bad one too, just to show you how tough it kind of is here. Go to weight paint mode here and fix this up. I got auto normalize on here, and I wonder if I'm going to actually normalize all my weights first here. So normalize all. Again, only deformed bones. Alright, now we should be set. Try to fix this up a little bit here. Add a little weight here. Even on this bad topology, you can always try to fix it a little bit. You know, but you'll see that there's not really much you can do. You're just going to get to a point where you can't get it much better, and it's not because of weight painting, it's because of topology. So I think you agree that's a little bit better, but like I said, no supporting loops there, so it's really crushing, and there's not really much I can do about it with weight painting. But I could go in there and actually add like a corrective shape or something. So if I added shape keys, go turn this on. So this is one way we could do it. Corrective shape key. I could just kind of figure this out you know, this ain't gonna look good. It already looks pretty horrible. But anyways, I could use a corrective shape key in order to fix that nasty bend, possibly. But you can see that I don't have a lot of topology there, so even that's going to be kind of tough. Anyways, let's get back to weight painting, since that's really what I want to focus on. Let's weight paint this one a little bit. And you can see, just because I have these supporting edges here quite a bit closer, I can actually get this elbow straightened out and deforming much nicer. Let's see, I think I want to dip it in there a little bit. I want to cave it in a little bit too much there. Try to straighten out this edge here. Again, I've mentioned this before, I like to think of weight painting as anchoring it towards a specific bone, so that's kind of what I'm doing here. So I'm trying to anchor these vertices to one bone or the other, just so when I move them, they're going to deform good. So I think you'll agree that that is much better than this one. And my good topology example up here, let's talk about this really quick. I've got I just made a simple adjustment here. I've got the edge loops here. I actually kind of slanted these here recently just a little bit to help out that deformation on how it bends up here. And I also added what's called a diamond quad, and that allows me to split my mesh, so I've got some extra edge loops down here at the outer part of my bone. And if I just go in here and weight paint this, I really don't have to do much at all, because just having that little change in topology made a huge difference on how this deforms. Let me just kind of maybe slightly change a few of these here. Yeah, I just want to try to make this edge a little straighter, and then make this edge a little straighter. Just kind of bounce back and forth. I think I want to add from this group instead, or this bone rather. So hopefully you'll agree that a simple change in topology like this can have some big effects, so something to keep in mind. And like I said, we can always go in here, this, if we needed to make a corrective shape for this one, because you can see that this one doesn't quite have that nice square bend like the top one, we could actually fix this a lot easier with a shape key. So just because our topology is a little bit better, and we've got our supporting loops here, so we can actually manipulate this a little bit more than we did down here, where those edge loops are really far away. So shape keys aren't the only way to do that. We could actually do this with bones too. We can actually add helper bones in here, and let's say we rotate this up, we could add a helper bone here and weight some of these vertices to those bones, and we can add transformation constraints or action constraints or other similar things here to move those vertices out and straighten them out. So corrective shapes aren't the only way. I just wanted to point that out. I'm not going to demonstrate that right now, but I think that is all I need to talk about now. Now we know the secret to weight painting. We need to make sure that we are seeing what Blender is seeing, and it's going to make our decisions quite a bit easier, and also how our topology is really going to ultimately affect our weight painting and how our deformations happen. So I hope these tips help. Until next time, we're going to get back to rigging Eve and hopefully take her all the way through completion now, finally. So good luck.